listening to you, which we normally have in the world. So that's very good to see. How many, or can you raise your hand if you're a business school student? Yes, totally numbered here. Who are PhD students? A few there. And who are master students? Yeah. Yeah. That's fantastic. When preparing this lecture, of course, I had in mind that people come from very different backgrounds. And you already got a pre-survey on the business school. Some of you have not heard about some of That's always a challenge to find the right level. And do things about sustainability at the same time as making it a little bit interesting. So let's start. This is probably something most of you know. The concept of sustainability, what it really means. And it means it comes from the Latin sustenere, there to hold something. It means that you maintain, support, or engage. Sustainability is whether to what extent a process or practice can contribute. This doesn't say anything about sustainability the way we are thinking of today. It's just something is going to last, not what is going to last. So when the concept of sustainability first was used in Western literature, I mean in Western, because that's where it's coming from. It was used by the German forester, and they used the word Nachhaltigkeit, which is sustainability in German. And the concept of sustainability was then used by Hans Carl von Carlowitz, from Economica, I think it was 1713, 1 year before he died. So the reason he wrote a big protocol for how to manage forests is that German forest was used for mining, and forest was used also by household, for that was the only source of energy. And he was concerned that this could really affect local industry. So it's more a resource economics perspective on sustainability. So what he did then was that he made some models of how can we harvest optimally to actually get the most of the forest over a long time. And what he figured out is that if we harvest when the growth rate of the forest is the largest, we will always have surplus from year to year. So if you have the highest growth rate, that's where you want to harvest. And this model has also been used for sustainable yields of fish and wildlife. So, and I think most of you probably know it, but to be sure, I want to go through this maximum sustainable yield model. And the point here is that when few individuals of fish or wildlife, there are too few to actually grow fast. But as the population size is increasing, there are more individuals that could have babies. And then you will reach a point where the population size will grow the most. And then you will reach a carrying capacity in the end, because at the moment you get too many, you will have density dependent factors, which you call them in ecology, such as competition, diseases, and other factors impacting the growth rate. So that's where you will have forest. So this was actually a reaction more to resource scarcity. And the way the concept of sustainability was used first time. And this is also a concept which but even though the concept of sustainability was used first time in this kind of sustainable forest management approach, there is other concepts of sustainability which has been there for in other parts of the world. I have one example here. In this area, we started a very peaceful area where they started to also work to regenerate forests and farmlands, which has been degraded quite a lot in Japan at that time. So they probably also had a concept of sustainability, which they worked from, based on regenerative principles, but more as a response to resource scarcity. So, and it was very aesthetical, also an aesthetical tradition. They are promoted regenerative forest and farming and energy conservation. And today it's actually 68.5% of Japan is forested, and 19% is biodiverse and carbon-rich old-growth forests. So that's a lot in the world. So they have really regenerated their forests. But also many other concepts, we are collecting them in the IPBES, which is the International Panel of Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services. We have collected many different concepts, which means sustainability. We have one in the Sami language, Birgijumpi, which is also has more the meaning of life sustenance, that you should have moderate use for self-renewal, and that's in the Sami language. So we have these words in our language and indigenous languages, in Japanese languages, but what do we do with them in practice is what matters. So sustainability has all these different traditions. So when you have this international discourses on sustainability, you will meet many of these different philosophies. So, but the way we are thinking about sustainability today is to a large extent a result of environmentalism and public awareness in the 60s and the 70s. But before that, there was already some debates going on the sustainability of using maximum sustainability yield as the concept for managing forests and wild areas. So you have Gifford Pinchot, who was the first chief of the USA Forest Service, founded in 1905. He wanted resource sustainability principles implemented in all public land. And he was thinking that that's a good approach to actually ensure that you have sustainable access to resources over time. But you have counter movements here through preservationists like John Muir, who was traveling a lot in the US at that point, and he was starting to get deep affection for nature, and he also attributed it to religious and spiritual values. So he was thinking about this as God's creation, and he thought that we need to keep land wild. We have to set aside wild land for public enjoyment and for wildlife and nature to roam freely, to develop freely as they wish. So protecting nature for their own sake. So these two, it's really a predecessor to this tension between anthropocentrism, we manage nature for human needs, versus biocentric views, managing nature for its own sake.
And this is when use and protection is like a part of the dilemmas you have in sustainability sciences. And now I'm coming to Malthusian catastrophe. And this is probably also something you heard about. And the reason I'm bringing it up now is that these conflicts about how to manage local forested areas was not yet about the global level, how we sustain the planet. But Malthus is in a way the first one who makes models that could be addressed. It was first addressed for England, but it was also spreading and addressed for the global level. And what he was saying is that the problem is that we will meet problems in the future because the population is growing exponentially. So you can see the population grows exponentially there. But the production of food is produced in a constant rate, increasing in a constant rate. That was what it was like at that point. They were not able to. So what he envisioned was that they will not be able to produce food as fast as the population would grow. And therefore, in the future, his idea in the essay on principle of population in 1798 was that there will be famines, people will starve, there will be diseases, and there will be war about food, for instance, and other things. So in his view, there is a limit to growth. And that's the first time people started to think about the limit to growth. And then I will also take a big jump to the post-war economic development period. And the reason I jumped there is that this is a period where you actually had a big growth after the war. And it is, and in this time also, according to Prof, it was also important to bring in the developing countries and have increase in welfare at the same time, in the same way as we have in the Western areas. And it was therefore international efforts to develop these less advanced countries. And the focus here was on material well-being and growth in per capita income. And this was also like a market liberalistic kind of thinking, while like you would establish a market and international trade as a solution. And then you had the industrialization. So, and this is where maybe Malthus was not able to prove his figure, because agricultural productivity actually increased due to a lot of technical progress. And you could also say that today, 40% of what we eat is fertilizers. So the food we eat are 40% fertilizers globally. So that means that you actually have technologies substitute what we're eating. And this, Malthus didn't foresee this. The other thing that Malthus didn't foresee was the use of fossil fuel to intensify production of food. So, therefore, we were able to grow. People thought at that time it's able to grow and to increase food production because you have technological innovations, which will help you on the way. And that's the developmentalist view. I have some keywords which I will bring in the end, definitely within those in the end of these slides. Yes. So now I'm coming to the environmentalist period, because there was a lot of problems with this post-growth war period. They were partly social, so but I won't go into that, because it was really the environmentalist movements that influenced the international policies that were put in place in the end. And conceptualization of sustainability in modern times. So a lot of this was a reaction to industrialization. But it was also ecologists working out in the field and documented some impacts of industrial growth. And one of them, which was highly influenced the environmentalist movement, was Rachel Carson. And Rachel Carson was a female scientist, not so usual at that time, and she was a fish biologist. But she started to be concerned about pesticides, especially DDT, for spraying crops. And she was very good at writing. So when she wrote this book, she used the metaphor of the silent spring, that birds won't sing. You will have a totally silent forest because these pesticides are thinning the shells of eggs of the birds, which result, and they are sterilizing also the birds. So in the end, you will have no more birds. So it was a bit of doomsday rhetoric. DDT and many of these pesticides also biomagnify in the food chain. What that means is that the further up you go, the higher the concentration in the food chain. So if you eat something, if something eats the bird and you eat what has been eating the bird, you will have a higher concentration in the tissue of pesticides. And she was therefore also arguing that this is the reason for increasing cancer. And this really made people scared about the impact of pesticides and other chemicals, which she also worked with. But she also took a little bit of time also. She started first with some reports in New Yorker, and she was attacked partly for being female scientists and partly for being a fish biologist, which doesn't really know what she's talking about. So, but it took some time, and then when she came with this book, she won the public. And what was happening then is that very fast in 1972, these chemicals she wrote about in a book was banned in Western countries. So that was a pollution issue which engaged people the most, the scaredness of their health, which is important for sustainability. I wish many of you answered in your question that health is important. Healthy environment and health, and for healthy populations. And a guy who was very inspired by her was Paul Ehrlich. And he liked the way she wrote, and she copied the way she wrote, and she took Malthus' ideas from the 18th century and wrote a book about how overpopulation could lead to a humanitarian and ecological disaster. And in this case, they also argued for population control. We need to control the population to ensure that there are not so many consumers that will impact the environment. So, but he also came up with the IPAT model, and that because of he also gained a similar attention as Rachel Carson. So therefore, what was happening is that we got this commission issued by Nixon, where him and Holdren was working with what are the causes of all these changes, what are causing impact. And he came up with this very simple formula that the environmental impact is a product of population size, number of people on the planet, the consumption per capita, and that the production technology we use to extract resources and the resource efficiency. So, and this was used by others to start working with and crafting potential actions. And in 1970, parallel to his work, the Club of Rome worked with this limit to growth report, where they also used socioeconomic and environmental data. It was the first report which actually used computer simulation to see on a global level, using system analysis to work with environmental impacts on a global scale. And here they used data, population, technological development, industrial output, food, non-renewable resources, and pollution, and made a model, simulation model, or simulated 12 different scenarios from 1972 to 2100. And if you see here, they predicted the pollution will increase over time, and you will have a population peak, then it will decline, and then you will have increase in food production, and they will all peak sometimes in 2050, I think, was the midpoint there. So we should be there soon. But then we also know that population is maybe not increasing as much as they had in their original calculations. But otherwise, many of these factors, they were rerun this analysis 50 years after. The report Earth for All was presented in 2022, and the models and the scenarios are still a bit the same. Some of these scenarios are assuming sustainable transition, but this scenario is not the most likely at the moment. We are rather going towards larger impact on the environment. Then another thing that actually also influenced policymaking, the international policies, was this idea about spaceship Earth. That when we could get out in the universe and look at our planet, and the planet are there alone without any alternatives, people also became more aware about taking care of this planet to actually ensure that we could live on it in the future. So there are always checks and balance here, and one of those counter voices to this environmentalism stance, which I will come back to why it's important for sustainability, was Julian Simon. And if you have time, it's very interesting to look at the debate in science between Paul Ehrlich and Julian Simon, because they have this debate they have is very similar to the ones we have today. So it's very interesting both for business students and ecologists to follow the discussion they had in the 70s on what is sustainability, why we need to limit our growth and why we need growth. So that's very interesting. But his countervoice is that population growth is more the solution rather than a problem, because more people increase the probability of innovation. That was his stance on this. So you will have more intellectual capital, and therefore you will find other resources, find new technology, and the free markets use that we will use things optimally globally, and scarce resources will therefore be substituted, and we will find ways of recycling, and alternatives will be developed by the market in the end. So there was this countervoice to this doomsday rhetorics. And you see, I have a keyword there. This is the techno-optimistic view on sustainability. Then, before coming to some of the concepts in international policy, I would also like to. You had other economists like Dali, who was promoting this steady state economy at the time. But one who also had quite a big influence on policy making was Schumacher, who believe that we need to solve the problem with industrial growth by going backwards and have more small, decentralized and deindustrialized communities. And the idea was that local decision makers are more likely to enforce sustainability norms because they are dependent on their own resources and they have the possibility to monitor them and enforce these norms. So they would be more sustainable. That was the idea. And then the other idea would be that agriculture, business, and energy would be more ecological sound. When you're dependent on your own resource, you would make more ecological sound practices. And in addition, you would be more likely to recirculate resources and use and conserve energy, for instance. And then they will also believe in self-sufficiency, and simpler technology will have the lesser impact, and it's better for us as people to focus on human needs rather than growth because it's more fulfilled. That was also part of Schumacher's idea. And this blueprint for survival was in a way to live, to make this happen. Guideline for that. So, well, all of these things happening in the 70s and the environmentalist view resulted in the establishment of UN, different kinds of UN policies towards the environment. And you have the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development. Stockholm, that was the first conference arranged by the United Nations on Environment and Development in 1972. It was very focused on pollution, though. And it was the sustainability that we find there was reconciling economic development with economic protection. And they draw on the concept of eco-development defined by Ignatius Sachs in 1978, where sustainability is an approach to development aimed at harmonizing social and economic objectives with ecological sound management in a spirit of solidarity with future generations. So it's development, not necessarily growth. But another thing they did, which is very important, is that they decided to establish a World Commission on Environment and Development with the purpose to advise on how different nations should reach the goals of sustainable development. Should I change where that? I tend to put my keywords there. Should I maybe change where it's? But never mind. We just I would just have to say it's there. I cannot see myself. But I should remember it. So it's okay. I think it's the right one. Yeah. That's very good. Yeah. I think so because it's different place. I think it's this is the one. Yeah. Okay, and this you also probably know, the report or Common Future or Common Well Commission on Environment and Development, also that was published in 1987. It's also called the Brundtland Report. And they worked for 3 years, had a lot of politicians, experts, part of the commission. But what they ended up with was a small tweak to SAC's definition. Sustainable development is development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So this became, in a way, the way people would perceive sustainability. It would be about needs for present and future generations and development. And this, in the Purvis article that you have, and also in the article, then sustainability got a very specific meaning, or sustainable development got a very specific meaning. Because in the Commission, economic growth was pushed as a solution to ecological and social problems, which is maybe what's needed is for developing countries need to attend to some of basic needs. You need some growth, but growth become an end in itself. So that was a bit of a change in focus of the concept of sustainability. And limits, they didn't bring in a way that there are limits. There are, you should be you should take care of the environment, but limits could be more related to technology and innovation, rather than there is an absolute planetary limit to growth. And then you also have this concept also further quite an anthropocentric view on sustainability compared with other definitions, where environmental protection is a means for to enhance human needs for present and future generations. The alternative is a biocentric, that you actually would look upon nature as equal and think that they also have the right to coexist with humans. So that will be the alternative. But the sustainable development concept is an anthropocentric concept. Just stating that. And this was also influential for all the policies developed by the United Nations up to the Sustainable Development Goals. And in 1992, this report was a basis for political leaders meeting from all over the world in Brazil, in Rio de Janeiro. And they decided in this summit, Rio Summit, on the principle for sustainability development. It's a Rio Declaration, which is 27 guiding principles, and again, Agenda 21, which is an action plan. And this principle was built on the Brundtland Report. Yes, and there's a lot of policies coming out from the Rio Earth Summit. Before the Rio, you had the Montreal Protocol, which actually was successful in reducing substances that deplete the ocean layers. So that was a very peace-using policy. Then you have this the two convention, which is most important, Convention on Biological Diversity, and the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. And what you could see there is that it took some time to get the Kyoto Protocol in place, US will join, and then China and India join, and then later the Paris Agreement, which will come to there. Similar with the Convention on biological diversity. They had this agreement to conserve biological diversity, which is a bit stronger actually than the Kyoto to the framework of climate. You had some success with the genetically modified organism policies relating to that, but you didn't have much success with biodiversity. It was declined. The actual targets here, none of them are met, and we're not going to progress in meeting the Kunming-Montreal agreement either. So you have these 3 other agreements, which is not enlisted in this diagram. And the Paris Agreement, you all know that we're not on track with the Paris Agreement at the moment. And we're not on track in terms of halting decline in biodiversity. And many of the sustainable development goals, some of them had positive before COVID, such as poverty and hunger, but especially the environmental one, and there's a lot of environmental targets within many different goals, still not going well. Yeah.
That's a quick question.
Yeah. Yeah.
But do you think they are actually reachable? Because I sometimes feel like the targets are very vague.
Yeah.
No one knows to be honest how to measure it. I am working with sustainability. I try to work for it and I aim for those sustainable development goals. But to be fair, I feel like it is very context dependent and it is not realistic in many senses. So do you believe like these targets are utopia in a way? Or because I have no idea how to reach them. They just put it there, which is perfect. I totally agree, but no kind of guide to how to do it actually.
Yeah. And there is no guidance on how to connect these different goals and targets. So that's among the problems with the concept, is that you have a lot of goals and a lot of targets, which is partly vague, and you could put what you want into them. And what is happening then is that people start to cherry pick. It's so many, 169 targets. People cherry pick these targets and say we are contributing to more sustainable production and consumption. So they are just picking the different goals. There's been a lot of criticism about it, and UN themselves says you have to think interconnected about this. You have to connect the dots between the different sustainable development goals. You cannot just cherry pick what you want. But that's what has happened in reality. And some will say, you know, the sustainable development goals, you have the Paris Agreement, yes, and that's very relevant for the climate action, and it's actually something that people are put into their national policies and which are affecting our lives at the moment. But sustainable development goals was in a way the first attempt to actually have a transformative policy, which has not been there previously. So there was an attempt to actually make a difference, and the business was very much on board, which is totally necessary if you're going to have some change. So in that way, you could say it's the Millennium Development Goals, which this built upon, was didn't have much environmental focus. But if you look at the Sustainable Development Goal, there is environment in many of the different goals. You would have an environmental target, which means that it actually could work in terms of combining environmental protection with other goals, which is important. So and some said to me, because I also been very critical to the sustainable development goals, and the Economist has been critical, everyone has been critical. But when I talked with people from, they were from, I think it was from Ghana, they said they like it because they could do something. There is always something that someone could connect to and do, yeah? So everyone could do a little bit, and then you collectively will be able to do something at least. So that's some would say that that's a positive thing. And maybe the next version of the Sustainable Development Goals will be more possible to use for policy purposes also on national and local level, because that's what you say, it's very difficult to translate to actual policy. But you will have a whole week with Sustainable Development Goals. So therefore, I'm not putting so much weight on it here. But yeah, you will have a game where you will play and see if you actually could use these goals in a sensible way. I think what we will do now is maybe to take a break for 15 minutes. And I also would say that maybe I'm talking a bit too fast, so you should just ask questions on the way, because then it was very difficult for me to pick out what to tell you today, because I didn't really know what will be interesting for this diverse group. So if you ask me, it's easier for me to just reply. And I will also give you attention to this. I think this is a good book, and it gives you the history of sustainability. So if you want like a deeper understanding on all this debate that has formed the concept, I would read this on the bed every night, because it's very nice to know what different arguments are in the sustainability field. Yeah. So this one by Caradonna, yeah, so history, the Oxford University Press. Yeah, so shall we take, we have to take 15 minutes, I suppose. So let's be back here 1:15. So I cannot tell you that that you will have all these sustainable development goals games next week and things like that. I think in the sustainability innovation course, you will not learn about the sustainable development goals then, because I heard just from some of you that you won't have those lectures and the game and everything. So this is just, so then I would have put more into this lecture on this. I didn't realize. So, but maybe you just then have to read about the Sustainable Development Goals yourself. Yeah. And the Paris Agreement and the Kunming-Montreal Agreement we will have about later, which is the mechanisms for sharing biodiversity and climate change. So, and I guess the innovation course will not have that either. So, let's continue. You have an article that is a part of your syllabus, where the authors try to figure out where does this three-pillar idea come from? Because this is when people talk about sustainability and you start to scroll, so sustainability, what does it mean? It always comes back to this 3 pillars. It was first 3 pillars, but then the triple bottom line and some other literature has put up social, economic, and environmental consideration, giving them equal weight in a way. And where sustainability is integrated part where we have found the right balance between them. This is a result of a political compromise. When Purvis tried to find out who has actually written about this model and what does this model entail, you were only able to find one publication of Barbier who really good for the conceptualization of this 3-pillar idea. And what they're saying is that it's very hard to operationalize, because there is not an idea. It just says that you have to have all these considerations, and then there are often some keywords on what you need to care about for the environment and for equity and social issues and for economy. And all of these goals are in a way separate. Again, they are not interconnected. And interconnectedness is like a key to sustainability. If you're going to work with sustainability, you have to work with interconnectedness. So if you don't have a very clear idea on how to integrate it and or at least how you are going to weigh these different concerns, then it's not really a consistent model. It's not a model where you could put up assumptions for this model. It's a political compromise. So, and also what's happening with this model is that these three are equally desirable goals to be fine. And then you will find, you will think that it's possible to reach a common goal and that there are no trade-offs. This could be reconciled. So this three-pillar model has had some criticism, even though it's widely used by everyone. Academically, there is not a big foundation for this model, but then not everything is academic. Something is also politics, and this is what this model is about. There was, with the Sustainable Development Goals, there are not big changes because you still build on the same principle. But what you have is that suddenly it's not three Ps, planet, people, and profit, which is the triple bottom line, which is more the business version of three pillars model. What does business should do to be sustainable? But you have protection of planet, of course, to eradicate poverty and hunger, and prosperity. Everyone should have prosperity and fulfilling lives in harmony with nature. So you have environmental measures in the different goals. And peace, foster peaceful, just, and inclusive society has come as a new addition here. And then you have partnership, that actually for something to endure, you have to have international partnership, which is broad, which include business, politics, and civil society to actually enable these changes. So all of these were put into 17 goals and 169 targets, as you probably know, which we will go more into depth in next week for those who are having those lectures. So the idea is that development is a multidimensional undertaking to achieve a higher quality of life for all people. And that means that all of these reinforcing components should be achieved. And again, no discussion about the trade-offs and how you're going to prioritize. And that means that it easily becomes so that sustainability is everything and therefore nothing. So that has been a major criticism. And also the trends are not favoring what's happening now. And if you look at these trends, you have the environmental trends on a planetary level. Tamer will give you more insight into this later. But you have the trends are all hockey shaped, they call it. You could see that everything from carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide, methane, ozone is leveling off. That's the one that's not going in the wrong direction. Temperature, ozone acidification, and then you have a kind of a little bit less decline in fish capture. And then you have shrimp aquaculture, nitrogen displaced into coastal zone, runoff to coastal zone, forest loss, clearance of land, and degradation in general. And they all show the same pattern. And if you look at the socioeconomic trends, the population is increasing still, it's going to level off according to models. GDP is increasing, investment is increasing, urban population is increasing, energy use is increasing, fertilizer consumption is increasing, large dams has leveled it off, water use, paper production, transportation, we are taking much more, we are traveling much more, tourism and the telecommunication, all of these show the same pattern, the hockey shape. And people are questioning if this could continue, this great acceleration. It's a very short time since it started. So you could see most of it is after the 50s, especially from the 70s until now, just 30 years, a long time period. And we are, according to the geologists, they don't totally agree, these ecologists, we are in the Anthropocene. So humans are impacting the planet more than any natural forces. And I guess you will bring up this as well. Yeah, I'm just giving them a taste. And this is also what you're going to talk about on Friday. That many of the planet, they have calculated now planetary boundaries where they think there is a risk to both people and the ecosystem with surpassing a threshold where you certainly have a lot of consequences. And it's especially phosphor and nitrogen, you know, they have been overexploited and displaced to places they are not supposed to be. We have to start recycling if we are going to work with that. And then you have, if you look up there at the biosphere integrity, it's biodiversity, like nature, that has been degraded for quite some time to support consumption, particularly. And then you have novel entities also surpassed. It's plastic and things that are not supposed to be in the environment. And radioactive forces like substances which should not be, which is contributing to warming, aerosols and these things. But you will talk more about that. So what we could say from this is that we're not on the right track. And sustainable development goals, the environmental issues there are not going in the right direction.
What does novel entities refer to?
It's like synthetic things ending up in nature. It's plastic, it could be nuclear waste, things that has been produced in laboratory.
So
Yeah.
it's waste displacement, basically.
Yeah, substances, well, organic food is not a part of novel entities. It's more like synthetic things. Yeah. But you will go into depth on this on Friday. So you will know more about it then. Yeah. And then, so this has been therefore very criticized. So they say that the concept of sustainability is the Pacta Mickey Mouse model. That's the criticism. So you had a theory where you're going to balance everything to political compromise and reconcile things and everyone will be happy. But the reality is that you have growth and then you have some responsibility relating to social welfare and the environment. And a lot of this is argued to be just show off from politicians and policymakers. So the problem here is that there will always be a contradiction there because you cannot have welfare for all at the same level at the same time as you will protect the environment. That's not feasible. So it has to be, you have to have some rules for who is getting what, like how you would distribute things. That's one thing. And the economic growth has been pushed as the solution and not inspected then as not in the sustainable development goals as one of the things causing degradation. So, and then economists would of course probably say that you need growth, there is no alternative. And it would be nice to discuss that a bit. At least my brother, who is an economist, would say that. So, but then there are also other economic models for the time being discussed. But this is also a question: is it possible? Is there a limit to growth, or is it possible to have growth without surpassing its limits? That's a big question. It has also been criticized for being green, primarily greenwashing. That you are actually just having some measures you're taking and planning for sustainability and showing off on your websites that you're doing that, but then you're not actually doing it, and therefore you get the Mickey Mouse model. And then there has been deep criticism about Western colonialism, which has been a major critic for the developing countries and indigenous peoples, specifically that these concepts that we have constructed here is not in line with their culture. And it's about developmentist philosophies, techno-optimistic and market liberation, which is actually causing more problems for them and for their lives and for their culture than they're actually solving. So that has also been a criticism that has arisen against this model. So we have always this dilemma: progress towards a better life, which everyone wants, and limitation imposed by nature on the other hand, which everyone also wants. So that's also probably a problem. There's this logical contradiction. You're going to develop something and change, but you're also going to sustain something. And then it's you are going to attend to short-term needs to people today, but then you're going to have long-term sustainability for people in the future and for nature's own sake. You have the intergeneration equity. You cannot take too much today because that will affect your grandchildren. And you also have this difference between rich and poor countries, which have very different needs. So you would need some development in the developing countries versus growth here would maybe result in even more consumption, resulting in land degradation in developing countries. So you have all these paradoxes built into this concept at the moment. And then another critique is that we don't want to look the cause problem. We're only looking at the technology, which is really leading up, and addressing symptoms, producing green, while the root causes are that we need to lower the number of consumers or lower the consumption rate per capita. And at the moment, maybe this is a local problem more than a global problem, because in developing countries where you have the largest population, some of them where you have the largest population growth, are only appropriating 20% of the world's primary production. 80% is from Western countries. So it's consumption is probably also something we need to address, not only technological innovation. Unless we could go to another planet. So, and also it's very important to understand, I think that there has been a mix-up here between what is sustainability and what is sustainable development. Because sustainability is where do we want to go in the future? What do we want? We want better lives, we want equity maybe, we want healthy and safe environments, maybe we want some wild nature. That's endpoints. But sustainable development is more the process and so to get there. So it's more the so it could be economic growth, at least with green growth, for instance, reduction of poverty and protection of nature. That's actions to reach the endpoint, which is sustainability. So endpoint and process need to be a bit separated. And then I will also bring up the concept of weak sustainability. And this is a bit like Julian Simon was thinking. Weak sustainability. So weak sustainability, in this perspective, people think that you could have sustainable development when nature is declining, which is the fact of the case at the moment. But that means that you must substitute the declining nature, right? You have to find a substitute. And in one way, maybe we could eat laboratory grown food. you know, maybe we have technological innovations which could help us on way, and therefore you will have sustainability in the end, because you will have substitutes, and that's a key to think about weak sustainability. In weak sustainability, people think that nature is possible to substitute with man-made products, and it has to be to some extent, as you know. But nature is still declining. And then you have this techno-optimism. You can overcome everything, all kinds of scarcity with new technology. That's weak sustainability. But then you also have the nested model, which was given by Team E. Riordan in 2001. And in this model, you talk about strong sustainability. That means that we are all dependent on the ecosystem, which means that whatever society decides and the economy within that, you know, should have prioritize the ecology of the planet. The next one is prioritize that people have good lives, and thereafter we prioritize the profit. So that's their model. They think that nature capacity to contribute to welfare is not replaceable with progress in technology. So that's opposite to weak sustainability. They are only achievable after the ecological sustainability is secured. So when you have that, then you could start distributing goods and you could start to use resources. Nature has value. So it's not the anthropocentric view anymore. Nature has also rights to coexist with humans. And so we must preserve the beauty and diversity of natural environment for our own enjoyment as well as for future generations. So that's what is in the concept of strong sustainability, nested model. Yeah.
These are.
Yeah.
Well, what do we mean by this one is the strongest sustainable, and the other one? So, like, should we emphasize that? Should we put more emphasis on the ecosystem?
Yeah,
like, because
that should be priorities. Yeah. So it's you should prioritize ecological sustainability.
But so, isn't it also highly biased? The model that you have shown with the Venn diagrams, it's not the Mickey Mouse one, but the
Yeah.
So it's emphasizes all three. It's given the same weight.
Yeah.
And I highly believe that model, I thought, in my opinion, is much beneficial.
Yeah.
Because I feel like if something is, it could be very, very nice to just like have an environmental diet, for instance. But if I am not happy with that because it's kind of overlapping with what my cultural preferences, let's say, or like personal, psychological wise and whatever, then it is not going to be sustainable for me at all. So like why we say strong to this more kind of ecosystem-based approach.
The strong it's just the difference between weak and sustainable, strong sustainable concept. The difference between these two is that ecology has primacy, that you have to have a healthy planet for anyone to prosper in terms of both socially and economically. That's the idea behind that model. So if you are losing nature totally, you know, the way it's declining, then there will be no things to distribute to society and resources to use. So that's the reason they put up this model. So it's just a model. So it's a weak sustainability model and a strong sustainability model. They are different in terms of having priorities in how you are going to make policy. So if you don't have ecological sustainability, not as a person but as a country, you have to do that first, and then you could start with the other goals. What this model also says is that you're not able to replace nature. with synthetic products, for instance. That's also a assumption of that model. So these models have assumptions which you need to investigate scientifically, finding evidence for each of these models.
That's interesting to say.
Well, that's just the concept they've been giving it. Yeah. So weak and strong. Yeah. So weak means strong, just means strong ecology. Yeah. So weak is weak. You don't think that nature weak. You think that nature is replaceable. Yeah. So that's it's a substitutiarity principle that you are able to actually replace nature. So you don't like the word, but it's not my words. It's other people's words. Yeah. 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 Yeah, it's two perspectives. Weak and strong is two perspectives.
Yeah.
So, and they are parallel ideas in society. So, yeah, yes. Well, there are two things: ecology prioritized, and then this replacement of nature, which is really different. But also that relationship to nature was about coexistence with nature, not being above nature and exploiting it. So that's the three things these two models differ according to. Yeah. And I'm happy. So that the sustainability concept have so many meanings and people have different meanings about this subject means that you have actually to ask what should be sustained, for whom or for what for whom or what should be sustained, and how long is the good or process in question going to be sustained? Because it's something about, do you think sustainability 3 years ahead or 100 years ahead is two different things. So when you work with the concept, you have to work with it in a normative way. So when you say, I don't believe in strong sustainability, it's a normative stance, and sustainability is value-based and a normative concept. So, and I'm happy you brought it up because I actually have an exercise for all of you. And I want those who are PhD students to raise their hands. Could you go to each of your corners in the room? Spread out, yeah. Yes, yeah. You could come down here and spread out. And then I would like all the master students to go to each their PhD student. I have master like in the ecology, yeah. And thereafter, I would like also the business.
Thanks, and we have to start now. So let's start here. How do you want to sustain? And what kind of models study?
I don't think we were so able to find one single. I don't think we were able to find like one specific practical tool, but I think we were able to instead critique the different problems in the different models.
Yeah.
And I guess that's one of the problems with them. That's, well, they're human-made, they're society-based. We're trying to find best solutions that we can utilize. But there are issues with everything, and at one point it's a value choice that we try to prioritize what perhaps we think or we feel or is perhaps the most ideal.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we have tried for decades and decades and decades, as you have shown, to find most sustainable solutions. But we are not there yet. But we are trying to make models that perhaps could help us develop.
Yeah. So you're not resolving your problem today?
No, not today.
We need more time. You need more time. So after the course is finished. Yeah. Yes. Next PhD on this. It's here. It's just we don't have time too much. But did you find something to sustain? That's one thing. And what kind of models were you in support of?
how long it should stay. And then we talked about how there is no points, but the sustainable development is a process that is going to continue forever. Yeah, so we just talked about different models and trying to understand them better.
Yeah. So that was a learning opportunity. So, and when is the next PhD here? Yeah, you're all together. Yeah. So, yeah. Okay. So, so here, yeah.
We want to stay for all the.
You have time to Did you have time to discuss the models?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Here.
And then here,
Yeah.
I'm the biggest group.
Yeah.
And I love my group because we share more or less the similar opinions. We also discussed more in the models, not the questions directly. But although my group is consisting of a majority of business school, they were also shifting between models. So
Yeah.
I think it's important to know what is the context and what is your priority at that point, because each model has their own weaknesses and also strong perspectives as well. So we couldn't land on a decision, to be honest, which is also a decision, I believe. So yeah, it was mainly, but would you guys like to add anything? Great. Yeah, okay. So this was it. But maybe a little feedback, Vera, because not everyone was having like a very good understanding of the social sustainability itself.
Yeah.
So it could be easier if we have like kind of like a background information. What do we mean by social sustainability or like economic?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Remember that next year. Yeah, that's good. And that's very typical, isn't it? For all sustainability discussions, like I'm also in the UN panel, this transformative change assessment. And in this panel, we are also debating, what is sustainable transformation? That's one thing, but what is sustainability? And what is, people don't agree. So that's and don't have necessarily the solution yet. Yeah, so this is very typical for the field, that people have different interpretations and different ideas about what to go. So yes, so I think it's a good exercise, and I wish we had more time to it, because I think we would have needed it, and maybe I should reduce a little bit on some other issues next year and bring in more context to this, so it's easy to discuss, because I think it's very useful. It's exactly the way you reacted.
Yeah.
Is the divide we often have in this field between those thinking more pragmatical about it and those who think that no, thing is so urgent, we have to do something now. So that's very, very, very good to see that nothing has changed. No, that's good. So yes, so thank you very much. I think I just have one more slide to summarize, because I was asked to tell you about the fundamental of sustainability. And I would say these 4 components, you need to be attend to that. And there is always this debate about this component. So you need to intend to interconnectedness between the ecology and society. That could be through the nested diagram or to the pillars, but interconnectedness is an issue here. You have to attend to limits. So if there are planetary boundaries or just technological limits that could be overcome, there are limits at the moment, but we have technological innovations which will help. you need to attend to trade-off. And that means you have to have an idea about how these different sustainable development goals, for instance, are interrelated, how you are going to weight the different ones. And this is the debate between should ecology have priority versus should be balance of these goals. Again, there is this tension. And then you have the ethics, and that's more the deeper values of how we think about us in relation to nature. Is human superior to nature, and we have the right to exploit it as we want for our own needs? Or do nature has a right on its own? We should strive for coexistence. So these 4 components you need to discuss if you are going to tell people what is sustainability. And you could say it has these components, but there are a big disagreement about what these components entail. Yes. So if you have any questions, there are still 2 minutes. Any questions you want to raise? Concerns?
Yeah, this is perhaps a little bit more connected to the economical sustainability and the prospect of governance. But I was wondering, do you have any thoughts of like the implementation of the EU taxonomy and the sustainability directive that's coming into action this year and the coming years?
We have a lot of opinions about it because we are working with it. We have created 4 exploratory scenarios for food systems in Norway relating to exactly this issue. Yes, which we will publish soon. We already have the visualization of these different scenarios.
I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Yeah, and I could say what it is because we presented it several times. And one of them is more that the reaction would be that we try to you will still grow, for instance, in terms of aquaculture, that's what is expected from the government and all this. You might find other markets than EU, and you might also switch to other kinds of. That's like the baseline scenario. Then all these different, there's 6 environmental objectives which should be implemented, and that's biodiversity, clean water, water management, it's climate adaptation, climate mitigation, circular economy. The last one is, there's one missing here.
I think something useless like.
No, that's but it's only the environmental taxonomy that is ready now.
I think we will.
It's only the environmental taxonomy, and that one is the social taxonomy they work with, but you're still supposed to have minimum standards socially. So that's yeah. But anyway, I need to remember last time. Anyway, there are 3 other. One is the regenerative, which is going to more local circular solution, which means that also going to have to shift some power to local levels. Then you have another regenerative scenario, which is more offshore platforms, where you have all industrial development, like most of the industry will be co-located in space and use each other's facilities and infrastructure. So you will reduce the footprint, and you will produce in circular solutions there too. That's the other one scenario. And the last scenario is that you will split the different areas into areas that are protected and areas that are used. So you will have a spatial approach. You will implement the protected area network, so things like that. And then you would have the intensive use in the other zones. So that's the 3rd scenario. And if you have other scenarios, we've been to several presentations with these scenarios. And unfortunately, I couldn't show you everything. If you have other scenarios you think we are not capturing here, I'm very happy to hear that. Yeah. That is in response to very strict environmental criteria, actually. So the EU taxonomy might have big impacts on the way you do things in Norway. Yeah, yes. So I will also inform you when we have product review. Yeah, so yeah.
Yeah.